Hi everybody, Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to kick off your week. It is still a blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. It is still being disrupted as well by the Iranians, staring each other down, and we haven't had another round of talks yet. The Iranians are willing to talk, but they are now taking the nuclear progress off the table, at least for now. And wanting to focus on a so-called skinny deal, which would just be reopening the strait in return for economic benefits to the Iranians, unfreezing of assets, sanctions reduction / removal. Interestingly, there are some signals back from the White House that the Americans may be willing to consider decoupling those things, having the nuclear conversations on a separate track than they would have to reopen the strait because of the economic pain. And certainly almost everyone else around the world would want to see that happen, not because people aren't concerned about the nuclear capabilities of Iran, but rather that every day that the strait remains blocked, irrespective of who is blocking it, the international costs are immense. Even if you were to reopen the strait today, in other words, everyone suddenly believes that it's peaceful and you've got insurance that's going to cover it and ship captains that are willing to go, all of which are questions at this point, you still have 1,000 ships that are backed up that will require getting into position and moving through. That's probably a 2-month lineup in terms of getting the strait back to normal. And that doesn't include the some 60 processing and refining facilities that have been damaged, moderate to significant damage across the region in Iran and also in Gulf states. And most countries, they need refined product. They don't need just oil coming to them. That's the way the economies function. That's going to take time too. So even if you were to have an agreement, and this has gone on for much longer than Trump has been telling other countries that it's going to, the costs and the consequences are much greater than people have been expecting. Now, Trump has said people need to be patient. He said he's surprised oil is so low. It's under 100. He's heard it was going to be $250, $300. That's not really true. He's heard from Treasury it could easily hit 200. But the real point is that the costs are going to be a lot greater than he had been hoping, that he had been expecting. And this is the first time that we're going to have a significant economic downturn that is directly on Trump himself. I mean, while he's president, the pandemic was going on first time around, hardly Trump's fault. Otherwise, the economy's been pretty good. This is a very different story, and it hasn't hit the markets yet, but it's certainly going to. And we've got over $4 gas right now. It was like $2.80 on average in the US. Now it's like over $4.10. Almost everyone I know that knows this field thinks it's going to be over $5 in the coming month or two, average in the United States. There's no way that this is not going to have a massive impact on Trump in November. You can't get the economy back in such a short time, and the strait, as of now, remains closed. I think the knock-on consequences internationally are going to be significant as well, because this is a war that the Americans decided to fight themselves with Israel, and allies were not on board. So the longer the economic consequences continue, the greater the fallout with the United States. That fallout is both military fallout, because the Europeans don't have the same access to the US military capabilities, nor do the Asians, when so much of it needs to be the Middle East. It's also economic, because their economies are getting hurt a lot more than those of the United States. The US ultimately much more of is an exporter of energy and a more resilient economy and produces more. The Europeans much more vulnerable. The Asian economy is much more vulnerable. The Sub-Saharans much more vulnerable because of the problems with food and with fuel. So for all of those reasons, you're going to see, I think, more difficult diplomatic relations long term with the United States, more desires to hedge, more desires to have less reliance on the United States for the so-called middle powers. What you're not going to see is coordination of those middle powers with each other, in part because there is no such body, there is no trust, there is no alignment. There is a fair amount inside the European Union, but not more broadly than that. And also, to bring AI into this for a moment, the United States has all of the most important AI capabilities in the West. The only competitor is China, which is not trusted as much as the Americans are, despite the hit to US trust, by allies around the world. And as we've just seen with Anthropic and Mythos, and as we're going to see with OpenAI and ChatGPT, the most advanced models are increasingly essential for national security. They're essential for the security and stability of any infrastructure with software. And if you don't have access to those American models and you aren't coordinated with the US government, you're in a lot of trouble. The absolute worst time for many American allies to be hearing that message, precisely because of the way they feel about their relationship with the United States on trade, on security, on intelligence, on military alignment, on the Russia-Ukraine war, on the Iran war. So navigating that is going to be extremely hard, and building it themselves is not an option in this environment. So tough to be in that position, only getting harder. For now, the strait continues to be closed, and if there's going to be a deal, it's going to be a lot smaller deal than Trump had demanded and hoped for in the early weeks. That's it for me, and I'll talk to y'all real soon.